Oh, wait, what am I doing? Oh no, what do I do? Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today, we're studying Daf Samach Tes, Daf 69 of Masechta Yevamos. Ooh la la, stretch it out. Oh man, oh my gosh. I was so tired today. I didn't sleep enough last night. Oh my gosh. Friends, remember Masechta Sukkah? There was that one time when I couldn't see because I didn't sleep enough? That happened again this morning. It was so chaval. It was like trying to prepare Babylon Talmud and I couldn't even see. Yeah. Like you can't go to sleep once you're awake because you got stuff to do. So it was like freaking, I don't even know what time it was. It was really early in the morning. I'm like trying to see, but I couldn't. And trying to figure out what the Gemara was saying, but I couldn't even read the letters. What do you want me to tell you? And hopefully I'll sleep a little bit tonight, but it's getting late. It's not looking like it. Friends? Let's go weiter. Where are we? Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about what are we talking about again? Oh, we're talking about people who are not allowed to eat truma, right? We're talking about people who are not allowed to eat truma, so that's kind of what the first Amud talks about, and also the second Amud, I guess. But yeah, like when you can eat truma, but then you can't eat truma because you're like a bas kohen, you marry Yisrael, or bas Yisrael marries a kohen, and then maybe there's kids, maybe there's not, but then they sleep with like a nos and a mamzer, fun stuff. So let's start from Samach Chesam with Beis. About 10 lines from the bottom. Ve'ema nivla lefasula hudich. What? Ve'ema nivla lefasula chayve kresus. Friends, you hear the kasha? What in the world are we talking about? So, to bring us back up to speed, we have this pasuk. The pasuk says, "Uvas kohen kisiya leish zari b'trumas hakodshim losochel." Right? That if you have a bas kohen, okay, so she's allowed to eat truma when she's living in her father's house, but then she marries a Yisrael, so she's no longer allowed to eat truma. She's no longer allowed to eat truma. Now, we said that pasuk we don't actually need to teach about a bas kohen because we have other psukim, right? For example, we had like two psukim that said v'chozol lo yochal kodesh. Whatever, we learn out from other places that a bas kohen, if she marries a yisrael, she's not allowed to eat truma. So what do we learn out from this pasuk? So we learn out that, well, if somebody who's possible to her, like a nosin or a mamzer or what, like one of those individuals. So if she sleeps with one of them, so then she's not allowed to eat truma. That's what that pasuk is teaching. So now, Frek the Gemara, so again, I'm on Daf Samach Chesam with Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom. Ve'ema nivla lefasula chayve kresus. So maybe I'll say that pasuk isn't talking about a nosin or mamzer. Maybe it's talking about her brother. We haven't talked about this kind of stuff in a while. Let's see, Lamaisa, she sleeps with her brother. So maybe that's the puzzle relationship that we're talking about. That would mean that she's no longer allowed to eat truma. So, and for the Gemara, havoyach, what? Kisiya amar achmona hanech dis bu avoya chavekresus lab bnei avoya. So the Gemara answers, well, what does the puzzle say? Vaskoin kisiya liish zar, and havoya means like kiddushin. Means marriage, and you can't marry your brother, right? It's not, marriage doesn't work in that context. So it needs to be somebody like a nosin or a mamzer, or somebody who kiddushin is actually tofes. Okay, fine. If that's the case, ovid kucham ve'evid lo lifselu. So then, fact the Gemara. But if that's the case, then let's say you have a bas kohen and she sleeps with an ovid kuchavim or an evid. So in that case, well, kiddushin isn't tofes by an ovid kuchavim or an evid. So then I would think maybe she can continue eating truma. And for the Gemara, hanach pasle midur bishmo. No, the reason why a bas kohen would be unable to eat truma if she sleeps with a ovid kochavim or an eved, the reason why she'd be unable to eat truma after that is for a different reason. Like Rabbi Yishmael, Dam Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yishmael, Minayin lo ovid kochavim ve'eved sheba bas Yisrael va'kohenes ulevia shepsalua. How do we know that if an ovid kochavim or an eved sleeps with a bas Yisrael or a kohenes or a levia? People are screaming outside. Why do you think they're screaming? What's so exciting? Friends, when's the last time you screamed? What are you going to scream about already? I wonder what's happening in their lives that they need to scream. I don't know. What could possibly be going on? Must be some kind of uncontrolled energy. Friends, what should they do? What should they do instead in their lives so that they wouldn't be screaming, that they could tame that energy? I don't know. Jumping jacks? Maybe they need to do jumping jacks. Maybe they won't scream as much. So where were we? So how do we know that if you have an Eved or a, what's nice about Babylon Talmud is that, you have the people outside and they're screaming and yelling. But then they're not going to scream and yell forever. They're going to scream and yell, they're going to bother me, they're going to annoy me, and I'm going to complain to you, as I like to do. Oh, by the way, I told you I would keep you updated about my, creaky aches and stuff. My neck, something happened with my neck again today. I didn't do anything. Nothing bad, Don't get nervous or anything. I like to find things to complain about. So, these people outside, they're screaming and yelling and they're being annoying. But eventually they're going to stop. But we're going to go weiter. You hear that, friends? We're going to go weiter. We're going to go weiter. We're going to outlast the screaming and yelling. So, how do you know that an Oved Kochavim or an Eved who sleeps with a Bas Yisrael, a Kohen, a Leviah, that she's possible, she's not allowed to eat Trumah, she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. Shenemar, as the Pasuk says, Uvas Kohen, Kisiya, Amona, Ugusha, Vigomer. So it says that if you have a Bas Kohen and she marries a Yisrael, and then she becomes a widow or a divorcee, so then she's allowed to go back home and eat Trumah, assuming that she doesn't have any kids. So, Mishayesh lo almanus v'gerushin ba yatzu Oved Kochavim ve'eved she'en lo almanus v'gerushin. So, and for the Gemara, you see that pasuk that's teaching that she's allowed to eat Trumah is mentioning widow, divorcee, to exclude Yatzu Oved Kochavim ve'eved she'en lo almanus v'gerushin, to the exclusion of an Oved Kochavim or an Eved who there's no concept of marriage, divorce, widowhood, because there is no kiddushin by them. The people are still excited outside. Remember that one guy who was singing outside? Alright. Okay, fine. So that pasuk is talking about, right? Bas Kohen kisiya almonu ugusha. So it says Bas Kohen. So I know that a Bas Kohen, if she sleeps with a Oved Kochavim or an Eved, so then she's not allowed to eat Trumah. How do I know also a Leviah v'Yisraelis? So Ashkan Kohen is Leviah v'Yisraelis minolan. Ki the Omer Reb Abba Omer Rav, as Reb Abba says in the name of Rav, Bas Uvas, the extra vav. Hochanami Bas Uvas. There's an extra vav. If you look at the pasuk, it says Uvas Kohen Kisiya Amona, etc. So that extra vav comes to include a Leviah v'Yisraelis Kiman Rabbi Akiva. So this sounds like it's like Rabbi Akiva, the Darish Vave, who darshans extra vavs and says the Gemara, Afilu Temer Rabbanon, you can even say it's like the rabbis, Kula Uvas Kohen Yiseru, as we said yesterday, the entire pasuk of Uvas Kohen is extra because, the very previous pasuk said Uvas Kohen, so it could have just continued without repeating itself. So because that phrase of Uvas Kohen is extra, so then, so even if you don't have to learn out from the extra vav, you can learn out from the extra sort of phrase, and therefore that comes to include a Bas Yisrael and a Leviah as well. So now the Gemara makes an interesting suggestion. The Gemara now makes a radical suggestion that perhaps actually what we can learn from the pasuk is that by an Oved Kochavim ve'eved we're more lenient. That after all, it says that by a Kohenes who gets divorced or widowed, so we say, look, it depends. If she doesn't have any children, so then she can resume eating Trumah. But if she has children, then she cannot go back to eating Trumah. But let's make a radical suggestion that maybe to the exclusion of Ovid Kochavim ve'Eved, that in the case of an Ovid Kochavim ve'Eved, even if they did have children with her, she would still be able to eat Truma. Right? Mishe'ein lo amonus v'gerushin bo afal gav de'islei zera, but somebody like an Ovid Kochavim ve'Eved, even though there's no concept of widowhood or divorcehood, and even though they have children, nami teichol, let's say still she would be able to eat Truma. And for the Gemara, imkein Rabuya Levi Yisrael is lomali. But if that's the case, then why do I need to include a Leviah and a Yisraelis there, right? If we're saying that when it comes to a Kohenes, if that would be the case, that we're saying that by a Kohenes who has a baby with an Ovid Kochavim or an Eved, she would be able to continue to eat Truma, so then obviously then a Bas Yisrael or a Leviah would be able to eat Truma in cases that they would be able to eat Truma, for example, if they were married to a Kohen and then they had kids, or, to be able to marry a Kohen. So, if that's the case, that we're saying that we're being lenient when it comes to an Ovid Kochavim or an Eved, so then we wouldn't really need to include Bas Yisrael or a Leviah, because if even by a Kohenes who has children with an Ovid Kochavim or an Eved, she would be able to continue eating Truma, so then, right, and that's more stringent, so then certainly by a Yisrael or Leviah, she would be able to continue eating Truma. And now, the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, D'Amar ein Kiddushin Tovsin b'chayve lavin. Oh, friends, you hear that? According to Rabbi Akiva, who says that Kiddushin is not tofes b'chayve lavin. So going back to the beginning of where we started today, right? Right? If we look at the very beginning of the Gemara, right? I mean, we had learned out from the fact that it says in the Pasuk Kisiyeh Leish Zar, that it's referring specifically to these psulim that there is Kiddushin is tofes, for example, a nosin, a mamzer. But according to Rabbi Akiva, chayve lavin Kiddushin is not tofes. So in which case, if the pasuk of Vaskon Kisiyeh Leish Zar is talking about a nosin and a mamzer, well then clearly Kisiyeh does not mean to be referring to somebody where Kiddushin is tofes, because if that's what we're talking about, that would exclude nosin and mamzer according to Rabbi Akiva, because according to Rabbi Akiva, any chayve lavin Kiddushin is not tofes. So therefore, how does he learn that pasuk of Kisiyeh? So he says, "My Kisiyeh Leish Zar Kisi boil," that if she has a relationship with an Ish Zar, which would therefore come to include not just Nosin Mamzer, but even if she sleeps with a Ovid Kochavim or an Eved. So if that's the case, so then Amanu Ugusha Lamali. Why do I need the pasuk of Amanu Ugusha, right? Meaning if that pasuk of Kisiyeh says that we're dafka talking about Nosin Mamzer, but not talking about an Ovid Kochavim ve'Eved. So if that is the case, then I need the pasuk of Uvaskoin Kisi Almana Ugrusha to say to the exclusion of Ovid Kochavim ve'Eved, that they would not be allowed to eat Truma. But if we say that, like Rabbi Akiva, that Uvaskoin Kisi Leish Zar means Kisi Boy Leish Zar to any outside person, so whether it is a Nosin, whether it's a Mamzer, whether it's an Ovid Kochavim or an Eved, in all those cases she wouldn't be able to eat Truma. Then what do I learn out from Uvaskoin Kisi Almana Ugrusha? So Almana Lahachmer Aleo, Ugrusha Lahakil Aleo. So by the widow to be stringent with her, and by the grusha, the divorcee, to be lenient by her, because I might think that by a widow, if a woman is a Kohenes is married to a Yisrael, and then he dies, so a widow is allowed to go and marry another Kohen. But a grusha cannot marry another Kohen. So I might think that by a widow, where we're more lenient, so I might think that even if she has children, she would be able to go back to eating truma. And we're being stringent and saying, and the pasuk is being stringent and saying, no, only if she doesn't have children. And by a grusha, by a divorcee, I might think, well, a divorcee is not allowed to marry a Kohen, right? A grusha is not allowed to marry a Kohen. So if that's the case, I might think to be more stringent and say, even if she doesn't have children, still she would be unable to eat truma. So therefore, we're being lenient by the divorcee and say, no, she is allowed to eat truma as long as she doesn't have children. So by the amoneh, we're being stringent, and by the grusha, we're being lenient. Utzricha and we need both the Almana and the Grusha, the Hashmin and Almana, because if we would only learn about Almana, so I would say Almana hu Dechiles la Zera Ochla. So I might think, okay, by a widow, if she doesn't have any children, so then she can eat Truma, because after all, she's still allowed to marry a Kohen, so we could be lenient and saying, look, as long as she doesn't have any children, she can eat Truma. Aval Grusha de lo Chazir Lechuna, but a divorcee who's not allowed to marry a Kohen, I might think that even if she doesn't have any children, still she's not allowed to, right? Even in a case where she has no children, still she's not allowed to eat any truma because she's not allowed to marry a kohen. So v'yashmin and grusha, right? So kamash malon that she is allowed to eat truma as long as she doesn't have any children. V'yashmin and grusha, and if we would only have a situation of grusha, so grusha udchi isla zera lo achla. Mishum de lo chazi lechuna. I mean that, yeah, davka by a divorcee, we say, okay, if she has children, so then she's unable to eat truma. Because we have to be stringent and say that if she has children, she can't eat truma because, after all, she's unable to marry a kohen. But by a widow who is allowed to marry a kohen, so I might think that even if she does have children, still she would be able to eat truma. Tzricha, we need to therefore mention the widow and say that we're being stringent and saying that no, if she has children, then she cannot eat truma. Alright, friends, what do you want me to tell you? Let's go weiter. Hopefully those screamers from outside are not screaming anymore. Sounds like that might be the case, but we'll have to wait another few minutes to see if we get a sudden scream. I think I hear a little bit of noise coming from outside, so maybe we still may have to endure a few more minutes, but especially from the rate at which we are moving through this daf, it sounds like chances are we will outlast them. Friends, let's go weiter. Ve'ema nivla lefasula af machzir grushaso o. Friends, you hear the kasha? Let's read it again. Ve'ema nivla lefasula af machzir grushaso o. So let's say that when we're talking about the different psulim, let's say that even includes machzir grushaso. A fellow is married, and then they get divorced, and she marries somebody else, and then they get divorced, or he dies, and then she returns to her original husband, which is something she's not allowed to do. Let's say that in that case, she's not allowed to marry a kohen, she becomes pasul. So the Ish Zar Amar Achmona, to which the Gemara says, no, that's not the case. It says that if she is to an outsider, Mishazar Etzla Meikara, Lafuke Adilo, Zar Etzla Meikara. It has to be somebody who Milichatchila was pasul to him. For example, a mamzer. She's never going to be able to marry a mamzer. But her original husband originally she was, of course, allowed to marry him. Now she's not, but originally she was. So that would not make her pasul. So now you can you have to skip a few words over here. So cholol dlav zar hu lo lifsol. So now let's say if that's the case, a cholol, right? Technically, she's allowed to marry a cholol. A bas kohen is allowed to marry a cholol. So if that's the case, then that should not make her a cholola. So Amarkra lo yichal zaru ba'amav makir zaru lo mahu posel af zaru nami posel. So to which the Gemara says, well, we learn out this chalala, this pasul stuff from the Kohen Gadol being with an amona, and therefore we say, I'm going to read it again, lo yichal zaru ba'amav, that we say by Kohen Gadol that he should not yichalel, make profane his seed in his nation. Makir zaralo, we compare his seed to him. Mahu posel av zaranami posel, right? Mahu posel av zaranami posel. Just like he is posel, right? That if he sleeps with Amana, she becomes posel. So then also his children who are chalos, if they sleep with with this bas kohen, then she'll become posel as well. She won't be able to marry a kohen. She won't be able to eat truma. Fine. Now, or maybe I'll suggest it's from the time already of Kiddushin, right? If the pasuk says bas kohen kisiya li ish zar, right? So we're saying that if you have a bas kohen and she sleeps with a nosin, a mamzer, one of those friends, so let's say that it means kisiya li ish zar, that even if they do Kiddushin, they never slept with each other, but even if they do Kiddushin, so then she should be unable to eat truma. So Dumi the Kohen Gadol, we say no, it has to be like the Kohen Gadol, Ba'almona, with a widow. Ma Kohen Gadol Ba'almona bebiyah, af hainami bebiyah. Just like Almona just like a Kohen Gadol makes an Almona a chalala from biyah, so also by a nosin mamzer to a baskoyin, so there will be bia, not kiddushin. Ve'madika havoya uvia. So let's say that maybe you need both. You need kiddushin and bia. Dumi the kohen gadol ba'amona. It's like kohen gadol ba'amona. Ma kohen gadol ba'amona b'bia lechuda. Afaname b'bia lechuda. Just like by an amona and a kohen gadol, bia alone is enough. So also by a apostle and an amona, bia alone is enough. Let's go weiter. Right, so you don't need kiddushin and bia. Reb Yossi, no. So if we go back, so finally going back to our brisa. So we said that according to Reb Yossi, what did Reb Yossi say? Reb Yossi said, "Kol shezaro posel posel, kol she'ein zaro posel eino posel." That somebody whose children are posel, so then they will make a baskoyin, or also Yisraelis, Levia posel. But if their children are not or would be kosher, so then they would not make these women posel. So says the Gemara, Reb Yossi Omer, says Reb Yossi kol shezaru posel posel, right? People whose children are posel, so then they can make these women posel, right? Then they are posel, these other women. But if their children are not posel, so then they won't be posel, these women. Ma'ika ben Tanakam Reb Yossi. What in the world are we talking about? So Amar Reb Yochanan mitzri sheni v'adomi sheni kebenayu. Where this matters is when it comes to a mitzri sheni and adomi sheni. Who can tell me what this means? Well, if we look at the pasuk that we're going to see in a minute, it says Banim asher yivaldu loim dor shlishi yavu loim b'kal Hashem. When it comes to Egyptian converts or Edomite converts, so for the first 2 generations, they're not allowed to marry into the congregation. The 3rd generation, they are allowed to marry into the congregation. And therefore, if you have a 2nd generation Egyptian convert or a 2nd generation Edomite convert, so if you have this 2nd generation Egyptian or Edomite convert, so then while they cannot marry into the general congregation, but their children are 3rd generation and they can marry in. So that would be the nafkamina. Okay, so that's the difference, right? So if you have a 2nd generation Edomite or Egyptian convert to Judaism, so then if they sleep with any of these women, do they make them posel or not? The Tanakama says yes, Rabbi Yossi says no. And both Rabbi Yossi and the Tanakama are learning out from a kohen gadol with an almona. Tanakama so from a kohen gadol ba'almona shebiyosu ba'avera ufosel. So just like says the Tanakama, just like a kohen gadol with a widow that he's sleeping with her out of sin and he makes her posel. Afai nami posel. So these 2nd generation Edomite and Egyptians make these women posel. Rabbi Yossi sarvik a kohen gadol. Rabbi Yossi says it's like a kohen gadol. Ma kohen gadol shezaro posel ufosel. Just like a kohen gadol that the children that they have from this union will be posel. So then also he makes the widow posel. So of course shezaro posel. Also you need, so in order for these women to be posel, then the children would have to be posel as well, whereas la'afuke mitzri sheni, to the exclusion of a 2nd generation Egyptian, de'ein zaro posel, that the child would be kosher. Tichsiv banim asher yivadu loim dor shlishi yavu loim b'kal Hashem, that the 3rd generation will be able to marry into the congregation. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Now Reb Shimon ben Gamliel had continued and said, Kol she'atanose as bito, atanose almanoso v'chulei. Anybody you can marry his daughter, you can marry his widow. What does that mean? Ma'ika ben Reb Yossi, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. What's the difference between Reb Yossi, who talks about like the children being posel, and Reb Shimon and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is talking about the daughters? So Ma'ika ben Reb Yossi, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer Ula. Says Ula Geramoni Moavi Iki Benayu. The nafkamina is an Ammonite or a Moabite convert. Ushneim Lalamdua Ela Mikoyin Gadol Ba'amona, and they're both learned out from a Koyin Gadol with a widow. Rabbi Yossi Savar Ma Koyin Gadol Ba'amona Shezau Posel Ufosel. So just like a Koyin Gadol with an Amona, that the child will be posel, be a chalol. So then the Kohen Gadol also makes the widow posel. So af kol shezau posel. So also anybody whose children will be posel. So then they are posel as well, and therefore a ger amoni umoavi forever, right? Meaning when it comes to an Egyptian or an Edomite, so then it takes 3 generations. When it comes to an Ammoni umoavi, so it never goes away. They can never marry into the congregation. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi says that they would be posel. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, look, ma kohen gadol be'almone shekol zaro posel ufosel. Well, if a almone and a Kohen Gadol got married, so then all of the offspring, boys, girls, yingles, midels, so they will be pasul. Afshekol pasul ufosa. So we need, as a prerequisite for making these women pasul, that it would have to be a union where all of the children will be pasul, yingles, midels, lafuke Ammoni Moabite, to the exclusion of Ammonites and Moabites, the ein kol zaro pasul, that not all of their children are pasul. The Omer Ma'ar, that we said Ammoni v'lo Ammonis, Moavi v'lo Moavis, that by Ammonites and Moabites only the yingles are pasul, but the midels are kosher. Friends, what do you want me to tell you? Okay, friends, now we get to a new Mishnah where we continue talking about like eating truma and stuff. Okay, so when it comes to rape and seduction and a fool, lo poslin, they don't make bas kohen's pasul from eating truma, v'lo machilin, they don't enable bas Yisraels to eat truma. V'meinin ru'uyin lavo b'Yisrael, but if they're unable to marry into Israel, hare elu poslin, then they are posel. Ketzad. Now what are we talking about? So, Yisrael sheba al bas kohen. So if you have a Yisrael who sleeps with a bas kohen, taricha b'truma, she can continue eating truma, no problem. Okay. Ibra, but if she got pregnant, lo socha, so then she doesn't eat truma anymore. Lo socha b'truma. Nechta cha'uber b'me'er tochal. But if she essentially loses the baby, so then she would be able to eat truma once again. Haya kohen sheba bas Yisrael. If you have a kohen who sleeps with a bas Yisrael, lo tochal b'truma, that doesn't enable her to eat truma. Ibra lo socha. If she gets pregnant, she still can't eat truma. Yolda tocha, but if she has a baby from this kohen, so now she's able to eat truma on account of the baby. Nimtza kochel shabein gadol mishal av. So we say in this respect, the strength of the power of the child is greater than that of the father, in that the father slept with this Yisraelis, this bas Yisrael, and still she was unable to eat truma. Once the yingle was born, once the baby was born, all of a sudden she's allowed to eat truma. So in that respect, the child kind of has more power than the father. Now, ha'eved posel mishum bia ve'eno posel mishum zera. So in eved is posel mishum bia, right? As we learned earlier, that if an eved sleeps with like a bas kohen, for example, she can no longer eat truma. But ve'eno posel mishum zera. But an eved is not posel mishum, right? It's not considered like a child, like a child to be posel. What does that mean? Ketzad. How is this? So bas Yisrael lekohen, bas kohen Yisrael. So if you have a bas Yisrael married to a kohen or a bas kohen married to Yisrael, v'yolda emenu ben, and they have a child, a son. And then he slept with a Canaanite maidservant. V'yolda emenu ben, and then they have a child. So that child, hareze eved. That child is now an eved, right? So you have this grandmother, right? Either a bas kohen who married Yisrael or a bas Yisrael who married a kohen. They had a son. That son slept with an shifcha kanainis. They had a child. That grandson is now an eved. Hoysa im aviv bas Yisrael. So if the grandmother was a bas Yisrael lekohen who was married to a kohen, and now everybody else died. The kohen, the husband, the kohen died. The father who slept with the Canaanite maidservant died. The only people left are the grandmother and this grandson. The grandson is an eved, is a slave, and we're talking about here, right? So, aim aviv bas Yisrael. If his grandmother is a bas Yisrael who was married to a kohen, lo sochal, she cannot eat truma. It's not considered like she has children, because the only progeny alive is this grandson who's an eved, and she cannot eat truma on account of him. Bas kohen Yisrael toicha b'truma. But if she was a bas kohen and she was married to a Yisrael, which would prevent her from eating truma, but they had a son, and the son married a shifcha kanainis, and they had a child. The child is an eved. So the grandmother was a bas kohen who was married to Yisrael. So if she doesn't have any offspring, she's allowed to continue eating truma from her father's house. And we say, well, this grandchild who's an eved would not be considered offspring to prevent her from eating truma. She can continue eating truma from her father's house. Mamzer, posel umaychil a mamzer is posel, and in this case he is maichil, right? So if a mamzer sleeps with like a bas kohen, for example, she can no longer eat truma. But if this grandchild is a mamzer, we were just talking about a case where the grandchild is an eved. What if the grandchild was a mamzer? Well, then that would be relevant. If she's a bas kohen, so then she would be unable to eat truma. If she's a bas Yisrael, she would be able to eat truma. Let's explain this let's explain this right now. So Kate said bas Yisrael a kohen. If you have a bas Yisrael married to a kohen, bas kohen the Yisrael, or a bas kohen who's married to Yisrael, v'yodei menu bas, and they had a daughter. V'holcha bas v'nisis le'eved or le'ovek kochavim, and then the daughter went and married an eved or an ovek kochavim. V'yodei menu ben, and they have a child. Harei is a mamzer. That child is a mamzer. Now, if everybody died, right, the grandfather died, the daughter died, the only people left are the grandmother and this child who's a mamzer. So I say, Emimo bas Yisrael kohen. So if his grandmother was a bas Yisrael who was initially married to a kohen, so in that case, she was able to eat truma on account of the kohen, but when the kohen died, so it depends. If she has children, so then she can eat truma. And we're saying that this grandson, who is a mamzer, is considered offspring to enable her to eat truma. So tocha b'truma she can eat truma bas kohen Yisrael. Now, if it was the opposite, it was a bas kohen who married to Yisrael. Now, a bas kohen who is married to Yisrael can no longer eat truma. And if she has children, then she can no longer eat truma. And we're saying lo tocha b'truma she cannot eat truma on account of this grandson who is a mamzer. It's considered that she has offspring from this Yisrael. She cannot eat truma. Fine. Kohen gadol paimim sheu posel. You can have a kohen gadol who disqualifies his grandmother from being able to eat truma. Ketzad, how so? Bas kohen Yisrael. If you have a bas kohen who married a Yisrael, v'yodei menu bas, and they had a daughter, v'olcha bas v'nises l'kohen, then that daughter married a kohen. So again, so you have a bas kohen who was married to a Yisrael, and they had a daughter. So that daughter is a Yisrael, is a Yisraelis. She then marries a kohen, v'yodei menu ben, and they have a son. So that ben is now a kohen once again, right? So the grandmother started out as a bas kohen. She then married a Yisrael, so she kind of lost her privileges. They had a daughter. That daughter is Yisraelis, but she marries a kohen, which means that their son is once again a kohen. So there is a royal Leos kohen gadol. That child, that grandson, could be even the kohen gadol. Serving on the altar in the holy temple. Maichil as imo ufosel eim imo. So we say that this grandchild, who's a kohen, on his account, his mother, who's married to his father, who's a kohen, would be able to eat truma, right? Even if his father, the kohen, dies, his mother would be able to continue eating truma on his account. However, ufosel eim imo, but his grandmother, who was a bas kohen, who was married to a Yisrael, she can no longer eat truma on account of her husband is Yisrael, and even if her husband dies, she cannot resume eating truma if she has offspring. And we're saying that this grandchild, who can even be the kohen gadol, would prevent her from being able to eat truma, since the grandson is offspring that ultimately comes from her husband who's a Yisraelis. So Zoso Meris, and then this grandmother is going to go around saying, Lo kivni kohen gadol shu poslani minat truma. Look at my grandson. He's the kohen gadol, but look, he's preventing me from being able to eat truma. All right. Says the Gemara, Tanina la d'tanu Rabbanon. So our Mishnah seems to be a providing a source for that which we learned in a Brayse. Shote v'kohen shenosu noshim v'mesu nishoseim p'turus min ha'chalitzu min ha'yibum. That if you have a shote or a kohen who got married and then they died, their widows are p'turus from chalitza and from yibum, because as we see in our Mishnah, the kiddushin of a shote doesn't seem to make a difference. So therefore, if they die, so then, their widows would not have to go through Yibum and Chalitza. Now, we said, Ketzad, Hoyer Yisrael Sheba Abbas Kohen, if you have Yisrael who slept with a Bas Kohen, Toicha B'Truma, then she's allowed to eat Truma. Ibra, but if she got pregnant, Lo Tocha, then she cannot eat Truma. Kaven to Ibra Lo Socha, Lecho Shema Ibra. So then, Frek the Gemara, I don't understand. We said that if a Yisrael sleeps with a Bas Kohen, so she can continue eating truma, but if she's pregnant, then she can no longer eat truma. But 1 second, how do we know that she's not pregnant? Right? We're saying if she's pregnant, she can't, but as long as she's not pregnant, then she can eat truma. But maybe she is pregnant. How do we know? The next day, I don't know. Maybe she's pregnant, maybe she isn't. So maybe we have to be concerned that she's pregnant. Milot Tanan, don't we after all learn in a Mishnah, that if you have a situation where, right, we learned this earlier in Masechta Yevamos, that if you have a situation where the wives get mixed up and you don't know which wife is which, so then you have to wait, right? If the wives get mixed up at the chuppah, so then you have to wait 3 months so that you can make sure that they are or are not pregnant, so you know for sure who the father is. So right, so if they got mixed up with the chuppah, so you have to wait then 3 months so you can determine who the father is. So we see that we do have to be concerned about maybe she got pregnant. So how come we're saying that a Yisrael who sleeps with a Bas Kohen, as long as she's not pregnant, she can eat Truma? Don't we have to be concerned that she is pregnant? So Rabbi Bar Rav Huna Yuchsin Chashushu the Truma Lo Chashushu. Says Rabbi Bar Rav Huna, look, we're concerned when it comes to trying to figure out who the father is. Then we say we have to keep them separate for 3 months so we can determine who the father is. But when it comes to Truma, we're not as concerned, and we say, look, if we know for sure that she's pregnant, then she cannot eat Truma. But if we don't know that she's pregnant, so then she can eat Truma. Well, the Truma Lo Chashushu, but is that really true that we're not concerned about Safek when it comes to Truma? But we learn in the Brisa, if a fellow gives a get to his wife and he says, look, here's your get, but it kicks in 1 hour before I die. So then immediately from now on she can no longer eat Truma, because how do we know that? Maybe this is an hour before he's going to die. So even though it's a Safek, we seem to be taking the Safek seriously in the context of Truma. So shouldn't we also be concerned here that maybe she's pregnant and she cannot eat Truma? Look, when it comes to marriage, we're concerned, but when it comes to znus, kind of like the situation where this Yisrael and this Bas Kohen, they slept with each other, in that case, we're not concerned that she is that she's pregnant, she can continue eating Truma. Wait, but is that really true that when it comes to marriage, we are concerned? Tanya, we're learning a brisa. Bas Kohen shenises li Yisrael. If you have a Bas Kohen who marries a Yisrael, v'meis, and that day he then dies. So they slept with each other once. Toveles v'ocheles b'truma le'erev. She can just go to the mikvah and eat truma immediately. So there we see it's in the context of marriage, and we're saying that we're not concerned. She could just and she can just eat truma immediately. So Amar Rav Chizda Toveles v'ocheles adar boim. So says Rav Chizda, look, she can go to the mikveh and eat truma for 40 days. Just for the first 40 days. T'ilo mi'abra, halo mi'abra. Because if she isn't pregnant, then she's not pregnant. What do you want me to tell you? V'i mi'abra, and if she is pregnant, adar boim ma'e ba'amli. For the first 40 days, it's just considered, water anyways. It's not going to be like something that's going to prevent her from eating truma. Abaye says to Rav Chizda, if that's the case, ema seifa. But what about the rest of the brisa that says hukar ubra b'me'el temikukelis l'mafreya? That if then it turns out that she's pregnant, so then she's kind of messed up retroactively, and she'd have to pay the principal plus a fifth for any truma that she ate by accident. So that would sound like, you can't just assume that for the first 40 days you can eat truma. So my mikukelis adarbaim. So the Rav Chizda answers no. What does it mean that he's so if she's in trouble retroactively? It means retroactively only back to the first 40 days. Meaning any truma that she ate after the 40 days, she would have to pay keren b'chomesh. But before then, it would be acceptable. Friends, let's stop here. We've got a little bit more work to do, but this flow is really going to continue into tomorrow. So let's just kind of hold it over here. Friends, for the first part of the daf today, we continued sort of on our discussion of the source for saying that somebody like a nasin or a mamzer who marries a Bas Kohen Levi Yisraelis makes her apostle. We discussed Ovid Kochavim the Eved also makes her apostle. Then we got up to the next Mishnah, which also talked about different scenarios in which a woman would be unable to eat truma. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Friends, that was Daf Samach Tes of Masech Yevamos. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.